Welcome back to 40/20 News on the Record. We have been talking about the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade and the impact that decision is having on Arkansas right now. State Senator Bart Hester of Arkansas at Cave Springs is joining us now. He's a Republican and pro-life. And Senator, a Democratic colleague, Nicole Clowney, just recently wrote an op-ed talking about this and her reaction to it. So what was your reaction to all the statements that she made?
Well, you know, I completely understand the position that she has, right? She's been very clear on that for a long time, and she really focused on the mother and the position and difficult situation that is. And I have I can identify with the empathy that she has. I can never understand the position a mother's in when she has to make that decision, but I appreciate Representative Clowney's focusing on the mother in this time.
So there is an effort and a push to come up with some legislation to Arkansas right now to make it a little more beneficial to women and those who believe that they are pro-choice. Do you think that there will be some movement in the Arkansas legislature in this upcoming session?
Well, I don't think there will be, and I certainly hope that there's not. I'll be fighting against any changes in our current law. And I know the difficult thing that we're talking about is what Representative Clowney was reaching for was should we have exceptions for rape? You know, and I believe that every child in the womb from conception was made in the image of God and therefore deserves protection. That they are a human life, they are their own entity, and they deserve protection. And I will fight for that regardless of the sins of the father. So
to be clear, you do not want any exceptions, not for rape, not for incest, not if the woman or girl is underage.
That's correct. I won't be for any exceptions outside of life of the mother. And I recognize that's a very difficult position. But look, at the end of the day, I just believe that every child from conception deserves protection from the Bill of Rights and from the government. That they deserve us to protect them just like we should protect the mother and any other living human.
Now, since the Dobbs decision came down overturning Roe v. Wade, have you heard from pro-life constituents who do have some concerns about where Arkansas stands right now?
I have. You know, I'm hearing from all sides, and I'm hearing from pro-life and pro-choice, but people just saying, hey, can you walk me through the difficulty of this decision, you know, whether it's a minor or somebody that didn't choose to conceive. And I said, you know, I totally understand the difficulty of that situation, but at the end of the day, regardless of any horrific situation that you can come up with, I believe that from conception, it is a human life and therefore deserves protection.
What about the concern that maybe the life of the mother, when she is in danger, maybe there's some gray area to that? So do we need to go over what that one exception is, the life of the mother, when she's in immediate danger? Like, what does that mean?
Well, I think it's very dangerous for the legislature to get in and start defining because you can't possibly understand what's going on in a doctor's mind, and every situation is unique. I think it's just really clear if the doctor truly believes in his medical notes and his training teaches him that this mother's life is in danger, then he has the right to, I believe, take that child, do everything he can to protect that child as well, but they have the right to separate the child from the mother at that time.
Now, Arkansas had one of those trigger laws, one of the very few states that had it, and so we have these laws, these state laws that went into effect immediately. Walk us through the process and how many years it took to get to that point, and how quickly and what happened in Arkansas to have that ban.
Well, you know, because we've been years passing pro-life legislation, really. There was some before the Democrats took over 10 years ago, or before the Republicans took over 10 years ago, there was some. But we've been steadily making the pro-life laws in Arkansas stronger. So as soon as Roe v. Wade was overturned, all it took was the Attorney General Leslie Rutledge to certify our law, and she did that within a few hours the same day, and that made that law in Arkansas. And so all abortions became illegal in Arkansas outside saving the life of the mother.
And is Arkansas one of the strictest? Does Arkansas have one of the strictest abortion bans?
I believe that we do, and if not, we could probably make it stronger. Right? We're in a pro-life state. The people of Arkansas elect us based on pro-life positions, and I believe they elect Republicans based on that argument over all other arguments. And so it's really important to the people of Arkansas, and we represent them well on this issue.
All right, Senator Hester, we'll be back in just about 2 minutes with more questions on this topic.
Thank you.